This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. What up, crowdfunders? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this show, we talk about raising money on websites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but we also cover some of the other topics that are under the umbrella of crowdfunding. So in particular, on this episode, we're going to be covering nonprofit crowdfunding. And more specifically, I want to go into some of the more tried and true techniques that work for getting donors for your nonprofit organization. If you're interested in a launch plan for a nonprofit crowdfunding campaign, go back and listen to episode number 152 of this podcast, the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this episode, we're going to be going more into some of the techniques that established nonprofits are using to maximize the amount that they're raising for their organization. So this goes into matching donor programs, this goes into direct mail, grants, all of that kind of stuff. And a big reason why I wanted to talk about this sort of subject or this subject matter is I realized I have a blind spot. My blind spot is I'm a millennial. I'm a guy in his 20s. I'm really familiar with internet marketing. I'm really familiar with social media and how you can get people on an email list and get them to take action and all of these different things. But my blind spot is I haven't covered too much some of the established ways to get donors for your nonprofit organization. And that is the subject of this podcast episode. So I hope you enjoyed. I had on the CEO of doublethedonation.com. He really brought his A game, shared a ton of useful information that you can implement to not only get more donors, get more corporate sponsors, but also to go out there and to achieve your nonprofit's mission. It's coming up right after this. Adam, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
And I'm actually really curious. So how did you discover my work online? I mean, I know I do the podcast, the blog, that kind of stuff, but I was just kind of curious there.
Yeah. So, I've been following your work and the Crowdcrux blog for probably close to a year now. And I think it was just from some of the articles that you put out, probably from Google and your organic search rankings. I know you do a great job with your marketing, and that's, I believe, how I discovered you.
Cool. We were just talking before the show a little bit about the podcast, and honestly, that's something that's only emerged, I say, in the last 2 years or so. And we do get a really good base of regular listeners, people tuning in, wanting advice on crowdfunding, whether it's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or today, us talking about nonprofit crowdfunding. I mean, I think you're a really big expert in the space, running Double the Donation. You've probably seen a lot of different campaigns. Could you share with people a little bit of your bio there?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been in the nonprofit fundraising space for about 5 or 6 years now. I own a company called Double the Donation where we provide tools and services to nonprofits specifically to help them raise more money from corporate giving programs and matching gift programs. And then we also work on some of the marketing efforts for about 15 different companies in the space. So we work with various online giving tools, crowdfunding platforms, nonprofit CRMs. We integrate our software with them.
Cool.
So across our team, we have some pretty broad experiences.
And what's your role at the company?
So I started it. So I'm the CEO of the business.
Oh man, that's 6 years. That's something that's so nerve-wracking to start a new company, but also I think serving the nonprofit space, that's something we don't really think of too much. We think of like sort of sexy like tech startups. What actually made you gravitate towards nonprofits?
Yeah, so prior to starting Double the Donation, I worked for Capital One as an analyst there, but I had just made various donations to nonprofits. And one day at Capital One, a colleague said, hey, Adam, I think Capital One will match your donation. Looked it up, discovered that the company did. And that was kind of the moment when I recognized that there were just so many dollars being left on the table. So I left Capital One to start Double the Donation, and it's just kind of grown from there.
Is that something that nonprofits are not aware of, or something that they just haven't been clued into?
Yeah, the match and gift space is actually kind of an untapped area for a lot of nonprofits. Companies donate a couple $1 billion a year. The best guess is about $3 or $4 billion a year from matching gift programs. But about somewhere in the $4 to $10 billion a year range kind of gets left on the table from a lack of donor awareness, a lack of know-how, a lack of follow-ups from nonprofits. So it's definitely an untapped area.
It's something, too, where it's such a changing game, such a changing arena. I mean, I've been talking a lot about nonprofit crowdfunding and fundraising, and those have only been recent, I'd say, in the last 4 to 5 years. So all of these different things are changing, and I think nonprofits are struggling to keep up in that way. But it must feel really rewarding to be able to say that you're helping all of these organizations that are going out there in the world and making a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's something that appeals to a lot of entrepreneurs in the space, is that not only are they building products and services or doing different consulting, but I know for us, we can really see the impact that our services make on nonprofits who have just such a wide range of causes. Being able to help them identify thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential, and knowing kind of the impact that those dollars make.
Having worked with all of these different nonprofits over the years, and I imagine you sort of get to interact with them, understand what they're trying to do, the emotions that they're going through as they're starting a nonprofit or trying to raise more money. Do you have any advice for the nonprofits in the audience who are looking for new ways to fundraise online? Any sort of thoughts that you have, just even in terms of where they can get started?
Yeah, so I think for individuals who are in the audience who are looking to either start a nonprofit or have established a nonprofit but are looking to kind of grow their donor base or kind of get their initial funding, it's really starting with their closest friends, their closest supporters, those who have donated to them in the past, and working through those networks. I know we've worked with just nonprofits to provide advice and recommendations. And kind of the first thing we always suggest is look at your strongest supporters today and then go have a conversation with them. See who else they know. Tap into their corporate networks. They may be an executive at a company or an employee at a company. See how you can arrange volunteer events with them. So really leveraging the existing network, even if it's small, to grow it, rather than trying to go out and find supporters who are not yet familiar with your cause.
Okay, and this might be a dumb question, but do you literally just go to a corporation and say, "Hey, we're trying to raise money for this. Will you match anyone who who will donate to the cause?" Like, how do you begin that discussion?
Yeah, so there's really two different types of matching gift programs. You have programs that companies have in place where they basically match any donation made by their own employees to pretty much any cause. So if you're an employee at Home Depot and you make a $500 donation to the local Big Brother, Big Sister organization, Home Depot will match that. And then you have the other types of matching gift programs where companies will say, I'll match up to $5,000 in donations from your contributors. For that second type, you really need to have a relationship with the company, either through an employee, through a board member, through historical volunteering. So you kind of want to start with those relationships that you first have, because it just gives you your highest likelihood of establishing kind of a matching gift program, either for a specific event, for your annual appeal, Giving Tuesday. any of the different kind of fundraising time periods that you have.
Would you say that is the best way to go about sort of targeting these really high ticket corporations, or is there a better way? I mean, I don't know, honestly, I'm just asking you to go through the employees, or is it just, banging down the door, trying to get meetings with these people, going to events? Are there any other ways they can sort of contact these higher up people?
Yeah. So for the average small nonprofit, small to medium-sized organization, the truth of the matter is you're going to have a tough time getting in contact with the right person at a Fortune 500 company. And I think that's typically where everyone gravitates towards. It's like, oh, I bank at Bank of America. Oh, I shop at Home Depot. I use Verizon. Let me see if I can get them to donate to our cause. Mm-hmm. Where there's a completely untapped area is in the small to medium-sized businesses. The companies that are doing $1 million, $10 million, $25 million a year in revenue. The number of requests that they get is just substantially lower, and they also oftentimes have kind of a vested stake in the community. So that's where we recommend small to medium-sized organizations spend their time on the corporate front.
Do you think there's any strategy to this? For example, if I go after a business that creates a certain type of product, let's just say maybe around women's health, and for some cause, my nonprofit also helps, say, women with some kind of thing that they're going through, or it helps that demographic. Like, should you target in that way, or does it really not matter?
Oh, it definitely matters. I think as a nonprofit, you're asking for a donation to help you further your cause. You've got to look at it from the corporate side. If they are able to see some sort of return on their donation, that's a strong positive for them. And they're looking to kind of align typically their charitable giving with causes that are important to their employees, that perhaps they can use in their own marketing and post on their own Facebook and Twitter profiles, something that resonates with their users and customers. So the odds of success, if you're based in a large market, if you're in New York, Denver, Chicago, Atlanta, where there are tens of thousands of businesses, narrowing your focus to companies that have a similar alignment as your cause is definitely a positive, and will result in better success.
Okay. I really do like to understand sort of the mindset of the person I'm trying to reach out to. So I guess these corporations, they really care about taking care of their employees. They care obviously about their customers. So thinking of it from that angle, how you can position your cause to achieve those goals, that's sort of, I guess, the blueprint there for that.
Definitely. Thinking about how you can provide, a little bit of value back to the corporation. Ensuring that it's a really positive experience for them. So that could be something as simple as, inviting their employees to volunteer and making the volunteer event extremely well run, providing a press release based on the support that the company provided. How can you just kind of give some value back to the company as a way to show your appreciation for their support and develop a stronger long-term partnership?
Aside from matching giving, have you seen any other major trends where nonprofits have been tapping into this thing as a funding source? Could be online fundraising, anything that you've seen sort of in your area with nonprofits?
Yeah, I think not necessarily a new type of fundraising source, but a way that some organizations are really strengthening their partnerships with companies is through the marketing that they do, not just establishing the partnership with the company, but kind of including that partnership in their emails to their supporters, on their Facebook pages, on their Twitter pages, highlighting the support that the company is providing. And I think we see more and more of that where, the nonprofits who have the strongest partnerships are featuring the company on their blog and really thanking them for that support. So it's something that we would encourage all of our nonprofit clients to do when they have that corporate support.
That's really interesting. Kind of reminds me almost like they're taking on the role of a marketing agency in some ways. Like they're helping that corporation spread their story and spread their logo a little bit. And obviously, it's a win-win situation there. But I honestly had never thought of it that way.
I think the win-win is really important. It's just kind of like any other relationship that you do. How can you create the interactions that benefit everyone, benefit the company, benefit the nonprofit, and benefit, the individuals that a nonprofit is trying to help?
Mm-hmm. A lot of the listeners are sort of interested in both obviously traditional fundraising, but also online fundraising. And whether that's crowdfunding or peer-to-peer fundraising, is this something that they can incorporate in any way in their campaigns, their online fundraising campaigns?
Yeah. So, I think the peer-to-peer model and the online crowdfunding is something that's booming for nonprofits. You've had historically the run, walk, ride types of events, but now we see animal shelters entering the mix. Big brother, big sister organizations having their bigs running or involved in the peer-to-peer fundraising programs. The kind of focus on the sponsorships is something that's an opportunity. So when you think about having sponsors for your fundraising event, not only do you want to maybe feature them in the slideshow that you're doing at your, annual dinner, or having their poster up, but featuring them in the nonprofit crowdfunding campaigns that you may have hundreds or thousands of visitors to, and thanking them for their support as kind of an additional piece of that sponsorship package.
That actually, just sort of triggered an idea here too, is if you have one of these corporate sponsors and apply that to an online campaign, people then come, they've never heard of you, they come to this campaign page, they're going to see that you're partnered with this organization. It's going to be like, oh, okay, like this is more of a trusted nonprofit. It kind of lowers those defensive barriers a little bit.
I think that's a great point, especially in the peer-to-peer fundraising space where the organization may not have historically had a direct interaction with the potential donor. It's, the organization supporters reaching out to their friends and family. So that trust is not there. So I think you're spot on with how can you establish that trust that it's a legitimate organization doing great things, incorporating a larger company's branding into it enhances that.
I was also seeing that on your website, you guys offer information about grants that nonprofits can have access to. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we're really proud about as a business is we've been able to build tools and services that our kind of paying clients see a lot of value from, incorporating our search tools into their donation processes, into their broader fundraising, but at the same time, make our database publicly accessible, where any individual can go onto our website and learn more about the matching gift programs at any company and the volunteer grant programs that are at any company. So it's kind of a great resource for especially small nonprofits who may not be able to buy our service to be able to utilize that. And a big piece that rarely gets talked about is all the volunteer grant programs. Verizon, I believe, when an individual volunteers for, I think it's either 40 or 50 hours, and they're an employee at Verizon, Verizon will give a grant of, I think it's $750. So you've got a lot of large companies like that with these really strong volunteer grant programs that the average nonprofit just isn't even thinking about.
Wow, that's crazy. I honestly didn't even know that either. And that's so awesome, because if you have access to this type of information, or even a database of some of these grants, et cetera, then it's going to totally change the game for you if you are cash strapped and you're trying to figure out, like, okay, how are we going to get funding? Knowing that information, that just can put you an entirely leg up among other nonprofits.
Exactly, especially for the small nonprofits who are listening. Those organizations who are really getting off of the ground, another $750 can go a long way for a small nonprofit. So I think, especially looking through your 20 volunteers that you may have for your organization. So if you're a PTA organization, an elementary school with a lot of parents who volunteer, kind of looking through that, seeing which of your parents work for companies with these programs and trying to tap into the volunteer grant program. So that's just all publicly accessible through our demo pages.
That's something that's just a very different mindset, because many people, when they first get started off, they're just thinking about funding. Like, how can I get more donors? You don't actually begin to think of what are the other resources available. And obviously the resources are, well, your donors are working people. They're connected to other people. They are working at a particular corporation. So it's almost like going a level deeper here to understand all the assets you have available. I imagine also your board of directors. That's another asset you can tap into. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
For sure. I think that's one of the things that I love about your website is for the small nonprofit, and there are, 500,000 or 1 million small nonprofits out there, peer-to-peer fundraising and crowdfunding can be one of the most effective forms. Even more powerful than for larger nonprofits, where the large nonprofits may not have that direct relationship with all of their supporters, versus a small nonprofit in a local community knows all of their supporters, and can really encourage them to tap into the companies that they work for and their friends and family.
Do you have any thoughts on how a nonprofit can structure their board of directors to help them out with this journey and help them out with fundraising?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting approach that can seem a little bit controversial sometimes.
We like controversial.
For a lot of nonprofits, they actually have a fundraising requirement for board members.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's there's sometimes some pushback. But funding is just so important for nonprofits that they've kind of made the decision that each board member is responsible for maybe raising $500 or $1,000, or when you get to the larger nonprofits, $10,000, and putting out those challenge grants and reaching out to their supporters. So it's something I would encourage every nonprofit to, at the bare minimum, discuss with their boards. Is that something that they want to kind of institute as either a requirement or a stated goal for board members?
In terms of these board members, what do you think is making someone decide to then say, yeah, I want to agree to something like that? Like, I want to be on the board of this organization. What do you think makes someone make that decision?
So I think at the core, organizations should want individuals who are truly passionate about the cause. We worked with a lot of nonprofits who have really strong boards, and we've worked with a lot of nonprofits who, especially on the smaller side and even medium-sized organizations, have individuals who just think it'd be nice to serve on a board. Add that to my resume. So I think by focusing and ensuring that you have individuals who are truly passionate about your cause, willing to go out and talk to their friends and family about your cause, talk to their company about your cause, is essential for a well-run organization. And potentially implementing a fundraising requirement ensures that individuals recognize before joining your board that there's a big commitment involved with that as well.
Mm-hmm. I also think it's one of those things where it's like we were saying before, a win-win situation where, while yes, this board member is helping you engage people or letting you tap into new crowds and sort of social circles, you're also putting them in a spotlight as someone who's helping make the cause possible. You're kind of, let's put it this way, but like stroking their ego a little bit, in that you're showing them all the amazing benefits that your organization is now able to do because they're a part of this. I think that's kind of like something that is a little controversial, but I do think it's something that makes someone then want to say, oh, okay, I'm going to totally be more engaged in this nonprofit because I feel good when I do that.
Absolutely. And they bring others into the mix. An alternative to, the fundraising requirement could be either bring in the dollars or bring in new supporters who may be volunteering at your events. Or if you're a big brother, big sister organization, introducing at least a couple potential bigs to the organization. Things along those lines that may not have a monetary commitment, but more of a time and passion commitment.
So I come from more of the millennial demographic. So I'm really tapped into like email marketing and social media. But I think you have a better hand on some of the nonprofits that are not as tech savvy necessarily. So I would just have a question for you here. Do you believe is direct mail still something that works for nonprofits or like these more analog style marketing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think direct mail gets a bad rap, that it's kind of an old school fundraising technique. But if done correctly, I mean, there's a great ROI, especially for larger nonprofits. It's something that has been part of their fundraising strategy and continues to be. For smaller nonprofits, if you wanted to dabble in that direct mail piece and, you're strapped for your budget, but you've got a little bit of time, even just the personalized handwritten thank you notes for donors goes a long way. Even putting it on a postcard where the postcard is, 10 cents for the postcard and 30 cents to mail it goes a long way towards that donor retention. So it's definitely something that organizations should be thinking about is how does direct mail fit into their strategy in some capacity? Maybe not the primary form of fundraising, but is there a role for it?
I actually really do agree with that in that you can even incorporate some of that into more of an online fundraising campaign. Like you can send people who have donated personalized thank yous. And I don't know about you, but whenever I get a personal handwritten thank you, I just feel amazing. Like it makes me smile. And that's just something that you can't replicate online in any meaningful way. So I do think you just hit the nail on the head there, saying that's very effective.
Yeah, I mean, I was a couple weeks ago. I can't remember over the last few years. I don't think I've gotten a handwritten letter from any friend. But a couple weeks ago, I had a friend out of the blue who lives in another state just write me a handwritten letter with a couple pictures just out of the blue. And it was one of the best feelings. It was like, wow, this friendship really matters. And that same approach can be taken from a nonprofit for even small supporters. And the feeling that your donors and supporters will have as a result of it is very, very powerful.
It makes people sort of feel like they're appreciated, that they're just not like another number in your donor database, but they're actually someone that you appreciate and went out of the way to do that for, I think.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, Sal, have you heard of any nonprofits kind of bridging the divide between the crowdfunding peer-to-peer space with pulling in the direct mail component, either through thank yous or through steering people from one channel to another? I know it's kind of a tricky area.
I have definitely with the thank yous. I've also seen nonprofits do very effective in-person events and also use that as like a call to action to their online ongoing campaign. So I think in person is just so powerful because you get to actually connect with those people and you actually get to know a little bit of who they are. And you and I both know this is all about figuring out who the people are that are most likely to give money, like who are the people that care about it. I'm sure you guys have a lot of data on that, like people that are interested in giving money, whether it's millennials or baby boomers or that kind of stuff. Actually, I would be really curious about that. So in terms of what you've seen with users on your site and the people you've helped, are there any advice you have on these different demographics, whether it's millennials or these different generations?
Yeah, I think it's something that organizations should be thinking about is their interactions with different demographics. I think a millennial would not think twice if they gave a gift online and did not receive a paper thank you letter. I think, my parents would really question, wait, they just donated $100. Where's the thank you letter in the mail for their contribution? So I think there's an opportunity to do a little bit of segmentation among donors. So if you only have a limited amount of time or budget, which of your donors will most appreciate it? Which of your donors, when you're following up with them about an employee matching gift program, can you communicate it to them via email versus which should you drop the matching gift form or letter in the mail to? So I do think, looking just at the different age brackets and treating those donors and supporters a little bit differently is something that should be done.
Do you think there are any other ways to segment the donor list? Because this is more of an advanced level topic here, but it is something that I think is really effective. So aside from age, do you think there's any other way to sort of segment that list?
Yeah, so you can get really advanced with this, where you can, take your donor's email address and find their social media profiles. And you could send personalized thank you messages to them on Facebook. So that would kind of be a segmentation of, are they on social media or are they not on social media? Or do you have their social media profiles or not? And then treat those interactions very differently. Would be kind of one more advanced approach. Their original giving channel. Typically what we see is organizations try to stick with their communications in the original channel. Direct mail donations by check get paper thank you letters. Online donations may not. So things like that.
I think another one would be the, amount that they give and also the frequency with which they give. Because naturally, it's very similar, I think, to the for-profit world where you're going to treat certain types of customers differently than other types. If someone's really investing a lot in your business or buying a lot of your products, you're going to treat them a little differently than someone who maybe has just bought, like a low-cost type of product. So I think there could be some segmentation there also. And I don't know if you've ever looked into this, but maybe having you obviously, when you're going after these corporate people for a matching donation, you sort of have this target audience, of core people that are interested in what it is you're doing. Would you also recommend having a core audience of people who are part of your donor base or your donor list? Is that something that you think about?
Yeah, so I think you're spot on with the donation amounts and frequency. It's a great, you should treat donors a little bit differently. Going back to the corporate audience piece that you mentioned, one, it can be tough for some nonprofits to know exactly which of their donors work in different places. We've seen some nonprofits who would give their list of donors to an intern and say, look up all these individuals on LinkedIn, and then customize messaging to them to see if there's an opportunity that John works for Verizon, Sally works for Toys R Us, going through that list, see if we can come up with an idea on how we could partner with them. So either researching those donors on LinkedIn, potentially using their email domains, Mike at Microsoft.com works for Microsoft. And then using those corporate insights to see if you can develop relationships either on the volunteer front or giving front, and that sort of segmentation of marketing.
Wow. There are so many levels to this, and thank you for sharing just a lot of great information about this. I honestly think this could go 12 layers deep, talking about all the ways we can use the assets we have available to us. I do want to ask you, so in terms of your software, Double the Donation, how can people use that and sort of who uses that software?
Yeah, so at the core of what we do as a business is we try to help organizations raise awareness and make it easier for your donors to submit matches. Our clients are typically organizations who are already raising a couple $1,000s from employee matching gift programs. It ranges from K through 12 schools, higher education, arts and cultural organizations, civic, community, hospitals, healthcare organizations. So everything from the small, elementary school in California to the largest organizations, March of Dimes, National Kidney Foundation, the ASPCA. So if you're a decent-sized nonprofit, I would encourage you to look through our website, see if there's a package that's right for you. to help you grow your matching gift revenue. And then if you're on the smaller side, I would also encourage you, go to the demo page, play around with our search tools. We've made it pretty accessible for you to discover information about your employees' places of work and the employee giving programs that are offered. So we definitely encourage everyone to take advantage of that.
And if this is something where I definitely want to make this a part of my nonprofit, say in the next year, I'm still sort of in the learning phase. Do you have any free resources where they can go and learn a little bit about matching donations?
Absolutely. So I think we've built our business through providing a lot of high quality educational resources. We don't cold call. We don't go to conferences. I mean, we've built our business through providing an abundance of resources on corporate philanthropy, nonprofit fundraising, and matching gifts. So just if you were on our website, doublethedonation.com, and you clicked on resources at the top, you'll come across a list of the top matching gift companies, top volunteer grant companies, 15 different downloadable resources, ultimate guides, PowerPoint presentations, an abundance of free resources. So we would encourage everyone, at the very least, to check out those resources on doublethedonation.com.
Very cool. Thank you for providing all of that. My last question for you here, Adam, is what are you most excited for? It could be your business, could be the nonprofit industry, could even be something in your personal life. What would you say you're most excited for right now looking into the future?
It's funny. The first thing that popped into my mind is our new office space. Partially because I spent last night packing up our current space. So as our team's grown, we're now at 14 individuals full-time. We've kind of outgrown our current space and are moving. So we're really pumped for that. But then on the nonprofit side, I think the thing I'm most excited by is how tools are getting easier for nonprofits to use, more affordable for nonprofits to use, more powerful. And I think that's an opportunity for most nonprofits, whether they're small or large organizations, to take kind of their organization management from Excel into these tools that just have so much automation to help in their fundraising and nonprofit management.
It really does level the playing field, whether it's crowdfunding, online fundraising, or tools like yours. It allows the small people, or I don't want to say small people, I guess the small organizations to compete with the big boys. Because now you have technology that allows you to do way more with less resources. So I think that's really cool. Adam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been great talking with you, and thank you for sharing all of that advice.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Adam and everything that he had to say about ways to go out there and get donors for your nonprofit, whether it's partnering with corporations to set up online giving programs and sponsorship programs, or strengthening your board, making sure that your board members are aligned with your mission and getting them to also participate with fundraising. There are many, many ways to get donors for your nonprofit. And I hope that not only has this podcast been helpful, but also some of the other ones out there. I've talked about nonprofit crowdfunding in the past. I have also written a book on the subject. If you want to check that out, that is Nonprofit Crowdfunding Explained on Amazon. It's now also available on Audible. So if you're more of a listener, you can listen in the car, you can listen on your way to work, etc. So you can either get the Kindle version, you can get the paperback version, you can get the Audible version. I'm really proud of this book, and I think it actually goes into a lot of the ways that haven't really been talked about to get donors online in particular. So I really recommend that if you are interested in getting into the online game. Finally, if you do want more episodes like this, you want me to focus more on nonprofit giving and fundraising, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave me a review. Let me know that not only did you like this episode, but you want more content like this. And that way I can get some more great guests on the show to talk about this topic and bring even more value to you and your organization. This is Salvador Briggman, and I'll see you next time.